So now that we've talked about how to make comments and the kind of comments that you're going to be making, I'd like to show you how you actually go ahead and make those comments. So here is a sample student essay, name retracted of course. This is an actual essay that a student submitted. And I'm just going to be looking through it. Remember, you can make some comments as you're doing your first read, or you can do your first read and then make comments. It's kind of up to you, but I'm going to be making comments as I do my first read. So the first thing that I notice is that even though the paper is largely in MLA format, one thing that's missing is the student's last name. So I'm going to insert my first comment noting that the last name is missing in front of the page number. MLA formatting says that the last name should be in front of the page number on all pages. So in order to make a comment, there's a couple of different ways to do it. The first way is to highlight it and go to Insert and then go to Comment. And here I'm just going to write insert last name before page number and hit comment. So that's the first way to do it. Go to insert and then comment. And if you'll notice when I inserted the comment, there was also a way to do so using keystrokes. This is on an Apple computer, and the keystrokes for that would be Command Option M. So you can also do that just by typing in those keys after you've highlighted what you want to be commenting on. So the other way to make comments is probably a little bit more intuitive, and that is to simply use the little icon for comments. So what I have here is I've highlighted the word rather, which has a space in it. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do this one because anyone can see that little squiggly line underneath it, but I noticed a typo there. So I'm going to highlight that word, go up to comments, and then plus comment, and that will insert the comment for me. So then I'm just going to write typo, something as simple as that. So those are just a few comments that I noticed right off the bat before I even started reading. And as I start reading, I'm going to look for, during my first read, other basic errors, things that jump out to me. So in the first sentence I see, as I wrinkle my nose, comma, and close my eyes, comma, I quickly shove a spoonful of wealth into my mouth. So even though I'm not quite sure about that whole sentence, the wealth in quotations does throw me off a little bit. I'm just going to roll with it. But the thing I do notice is a grammatical error. And here it is the fact that there are too many commas here. In fact, you don't really need those commas. As I wrinkle my nose and close my eyes, comma. Or you could even say, as I wrinkle my nose and close my eyes, I quickly shove a spoonful of wealth into my mouth. No commas necessary, whatever. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to add my comment. And I'm going to say, omit first or both commas. Grammatical issue. Now, I'm just trying to keep it concise. You could use more informal language, like, I don't think you need that many commas, or this felt a little bit choppy, get rid of the commas. You can say it however you want, just as long as it's clear what the issue is and how they should fix it. So I'm not going to point out every single error while I do this now, but if you were looking at it, you would want to read through and notice any other issues, grammatical errors, spelling errors, anywhere where the writing felt awkward during your first read and make comments. But I'm going to scroll through, and I'm going to keep in mind that I also want to be making positive comments because this is a pretty interesting piece of writing, and I want to encourage this writer to expand upon these great moments. So I'm looking through here, and as I read through, I see this sentence, each food item on the menu symbolizes a benefit that you will reap in the new year. So even though I can see that there's a grammatical error with the comma there, which I would make a comment on, I also like it. So before I get to critical comments, I'm going to highlight this, add my comment, and say something positive. I love how you discuss the symbolism, I spell correctly, of the food here. Comment. A happy, positive comment to let them know that I'm actually really enjoying this story. I just, am providing critical feedback in addition to those positive, encouraging notes. So once I'm done with my first round of reading through, commenting on my first impressions, picking up on things I like, things I dislike, or things that need a little work, just my what I'm coming up with off the top of my head, then I'm going to look at the peer review guide. So one of the questions on the peer review guide is to summarize, highlight the inciting incident, and the climax of the story. But as I'm reading through here, I don't really notice an inciting incident. So I'm going to bookmark that in my mind and make sure I just mention that in the end comment. I didn't notice an inciting incident in this story. It doesn't necessarily need one, but I'm going to make that comment anyway. But the climax, I definitely remember reading about a climax. So as I read through it one more time, my second time around, and I come across a place that I think was the climax the first time, I'm going to do just what I'm told to do in the guide. I'm going to highlight it, and that's all. Highlight, create my comment, and write climax. Sometimes you'll have to make more elaborate feedback, but a lot of times you just have to make the decision. Is this something for my end comment, or is this something for my comments as I go along? And it might be different depending on what piece of writing you're reading. Some writer might have a different response, or some peer reviewer might have a different response than you have to whether or not you should use an end comment or a side comment. Either way, it's okay. As long as you're addressing it in some way, it's all good. But once you're done making all of your marginal comments, it's time to round off the peer review with your end comment and your discussion. When you're ready to do your end comment or your end note, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can either type it at the end of the document, but in a different color, or highlight it so that they can clearly see that it's not part of their text and it draws attention to it. Or you can write it up in an email, send it as a message or multiple messages in a chat, or if you're doing this sort of thing on like a discussion board or a forum, you can post it as a reply. So as you're writing up your end comment, there are a few things that you should consider talking about. First of all, did the essay meet all requirements of the assignment? And if there is anything missing, point that out. Very, very important. Also, in general, what did they do well? So this could be, in general, you were really good at description. In general, you were really, really good at paragraphing. Or you could say, in paragraph 1, paragraph 3, and paragraph 5, you had beautiful examples of description. And this way you're actually referring back to maybe a comment you make or giving them a specific place where they describe things well, but in a general comment. Likewise, in general, what needs improvement? Maybe they had a lot of run-on sentences, and you pointed that out in a couple of places, but maybe you want to make just a little note here. You had a lot of run-ons. I would recommend rereading your draft to look for places where you have run-ons and split them into different sentences. Some kind of advice like that. Now, this is something that I like to do for almost every time I grade your papers, and that is to focus on one most important thing to work on. So maybe there's more than one thing, maybe you want to mention more than one thing, but at the very least, think about the thing that would help this paper shine if the author didn't do anything else to improve it. The last things, of course, would be any questions from the guide that can't be answered in a marginal comment. These would be holistic questions that talk about the whole paper, or maybe, for instance, if there was something missing, the guide is asking us to look at what things are missing, mention them here, because obviously you can't make a comment on something that's missing and highlight it in a comment if it's not in the text. So when you're all done with all of your commenting, your marginal comments, your end comments, now it's time to discuss with your partner or your partners the drafts that you're peer reviewing. So there's a lot of different ways to discuss. You can do it in person, you could meet on campus, or if you're in a classroom and you're doing it in a classroom, obviously you're doing it in person. Sometimes you might have replies to discussion board posts for feedback. You can also do things like email or text back and forth. You could talk on the phone. I mean, even though we're more probably comfortable with things like chat, text, and email, phone calls are a lot quicker. It's not a lot of back and forth. It's a once and done conversation. So if you're really short on time, a phone call might be preferable. And of course, online chatting, which is what I'm recommending because we all have access to Google Hangouts through our Hack Google accounts. So if your discussion is extemporaneous, that means it's not happening in real time. It's not in person. It's not on a phone call. Check in with your partner occasionally. So if you're emailing or chatting back and forth, just check your email or chats maybe once a day while the peer review period is going on, or while you're editing before you submit your paper, in case they have any questions. You might also get notifications if they reply to a comment. So check your email for those notifications as well. So here's just a quick recap. The first thing you want to do is read and make general comments. That's reading round 1. Then you're going to read one more time and make specific comments, including comments that address the assignment prompt or what you're required to do for the assignment, as well as any peer review guide. And then you make an end note kind of summing everything up, and take some time to discuss what you came up with and your feedback with your partner. So all of that is just the peer review end of it. That doesn't even touch on your actual revision. And that's kind of the fifth component to this discussion: responding to comments and editing your draft. So everybody has techniques that they use for editing, and I'm not going to really get into that as well. Our book also has a very thorough guide to editing each kind of paper we'll be writing. But here are a couple of tips for editing in Google Docs. So first of all, I recommend creating a copy before you edit to have separate versions of a draft. And here's how you do that. It's pretty easy. All you do is when you open up the file after it's been peer reviewed, just go to File, make a copy, and then make sure you hit, very, very important, Copy, Comments, and Suggestions. You can share it with the same people, but you can also uncheck that. You can also rename it. I would recommend renaming it like Final Version or something of that nature. And there it is, with all comments intact. In addition to that suggestion, I also recommend that you can, in some cases, reply directly to comments to ask questions for your peer reviewer or to get more specific feedback instead of doing a separate chat. This just kind of helps focus the discussion. And also, you can resolve a comment when you're done with it. Resolving a comment kind of cleans up your document. But if you resolve a comment and you weren't actually done with it, it is possible to see it again. And I'll show you how. So as I'm going through and I'm trying to respond to all these comments, I'm probably going to be resolving some of them so I don't have all of these highlights everywhere. So the first one says insert last name before page number. I'm going to go ahead and do that and hit resolve. I feel like I've adequately done it. But what if you have a moment where you're second guessing yourself? Or what if you resolve something and you didn't actually address what was said in the comment? Maybe it was an accident. Well, the good news is that every single record of those comments is located in the comments thread, which you can access simply by clicking here. So that's all of the technical details involved with peer reviewing on Google Docs. Obviously, there's a lot more to it. So if you have any questions either about a technical component or just about the peer review process, feel free to email me or message me on Hangouts, which is, of course, Google Chat. Additionally, if you've noticed that anything seems outdated in this video, because technology does change very rapidly, please let me know about that too so I know to update it for other students. Thanks and good luck!